Today, we're diving into a powerful article that asks some really tough questions about the job situation in Meghalaya. It's a story about closed doors, familiar faces, and a whole generation that's basically being left out in the cold. So, let's break down what's really going on. Right out of the gate, the article hits us with this really stark contrast. I mean, look at this. On one side, inside the government offices, you've got retired officials being brought back to work. And on the other side, a huge number of young people with no job. This is the central paradox we're going to unpack. So, what exactly is this? It's called contractual rehiring. And get this, a government order from 2023 actually makes it official policy. Retired officials can come back as consultants and get paid pretty much what they were earning right before they retired, just minus their pension. The source calls it what it sounds like, double tipping. Yeah, the article really doesn't pull any punches. It throws out this incredibly provocative question, and it forces you to think, is this system really about running the state effectively, or is it about keeping opportunities within a small, older circle? Okay, so to really get a handle on just how big this problem is, we gotta look at the numbers. And the article, it breaks down the math behind this youth unemployment gap, and honestly, it's pretty sobering stuff. Let's start right here. 70,000. That's how many young people in Meghalaya enter the job market every single year, ready to work. Think about that. That's a huge wave of ambition and potential just waiting to be tapped. But here's the other side of that coin. You look at the government, which is the state's biggest employer, and it's only creating about 2,000, maybe 2,500 new jobs a year. You can already see where this is headed, right? And boom, here's the result, an annual gap of 67,500 young people. And look, this isn't just some random number pulled out of thin air. This is a figure that was actually acknowledged by the chief minister in the assembly. It's an officially recognized crisis. But what's really chilling, according to the source, is the way these numbers are talked about. It notes that when these figures were presented, the tone was just so detached, so clinical. This quote right here says it all. It was like they were talking about surplus crops, not surplus human beings. But the problem actually goes deeper than just a lack of jobs. It's also about where the money and the people are actually going inside the system. We're talking about consultants and the folks who are still on the job. So the article points to government data that shows 124 consultants were hired in a single financial year. But here's where it gets really interesting. Of those 124, only 26 were local. The vast majority, 98 of them, were brought in from outside Meghalaya. And the price tag for all of this? A whopping 22.56 crore rupees. That's what was paid out to these consultants in just 1 year. I mean, just think about that for a second. How many local graduates could you employ with that kind of cash? And this really gets to the heart of the argument against relying on so many outside consultants. The critique is that they just don't have that deep local knowledge. They might not speak the languages, Khasi, Garo, Jaintia, and yet they're the ones drafting policies for communities they can't even directly talk to. And here's another crazy layer to the puzzle. At the exact same time all this money is being spent on retirees and outsiders, the actual officers still on the job, well, they're stretched incredibly thin. You have one person juggling 2, sometimes even 3 different departments. The source suggests it's a system just asking for things to break down. And all of it, leads us to the single toughest, most uncomfortable question in the entire piece. It's a question that completely flips the script on who's to blame. See, the official line for hiring retirees and outsiders is always, well, we need their expertise, they're more competent. But the article turns that logic completely on its head. It asks, okay, if our youth aren't competent enough, then who made them that way? The implied answer is pretty damning. The failure isn't with the young people themselves. No, it's the result of a massive systemic failure in the state's education system for the last 50 years. A system, by the way, run by the same government that now says its own graduates aren't good enough. So where does that leave us? Well, the final part of the article doesn't really give us any easy answers. Instead, it just fires off a series of sharp, pointed questions that basically put the entire system on trial. First up, this really fundamental question about fairness. Why does a retired officer who's already had a full career deserve a second paycheck more than a young graduate deserves their very first one? Then it asks this, and it's a zinger.
Are we actually running a government here, or is it just an old boys club, a system based on who you know, not what you can do?
And here's another one that just highlights the disconnect. If the problem really is a lack of competence among the youth, then shouldn't the solution be declaring an education emergency? Why not pour money into fixing that instead of overpaying outsiders?
Ultimately, the article's conclusion is crystal clear. The problem isn't a lack of talent in Meghalaya's youth. The real problem is a lack of political will, a government that prefers sticking with the familiar faces of the past instead of investing in the future. So let's just come back to this number one last time. 67,500. The article wants this number burned into your memory.
And then it reframes that number with a devastatingly simple metaphor. It says, these aren't just numbers, these are nails. 67,500 nails every single year. And so we're not left with a neat conclusion. We're left with a challenge. The article takes this issue of policy and statistics and turns it into a question of conscience. It leaves us with one final thought. Tell me that doesn't keep you awake at night.